All right, so who's first on the agenda today? I think that's you, Jakob.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm sort of stealing the show from other people who work on the Redis upgrade, but what I wanted to talk about is not the Redis upgrade itself. Sorry, we just upgraded Redis cache to 6.2, and we means Alejandro and Igor, and not me. But I was interested in this because of latency spikes we were seeing on the Git service. I was curious if those got better, and they haven't, I think, which is disappointing, but it's also interesting. So I just wanted to quickly talk through the graphs I collected for that. So now I should share my screen. So I wrote a comment about this. Can you see my browser? Yeah. Okay. I wrote a comment about this on the issue where we talked about upgrading. And the problem really is this. So it's really straightforward to see in the Rails request logs. If you filter for type Git and you look for requests of duration longer than 1 second, then you see these bursts. And this is a problem. And these shouldn't be there. Like the Git service is where the Git HTTP traffic goes, and all these requests need to do is to look up a project and a user in the database and say this user exists, the project exists, and here's the Git lead server, and now go away. So that, well, that should take less than 100 milliseconds. It's slow enough as it is, but it should take more than a second. And the weird pattern we have is that when it takes longer than a second, it's usually because of Redis, because of Redis cache. I think if I take this filter out, then you sort of see the same thing. Oh, they move a bit. Why did they move? Maybe because of now.
Maybe
the last 1
it's
hour.
just time has passed.
Yeah. So yeah, no, these are actually, if I exclude these, then we have way fewer. So there are still some others, so that's funny, but there's this correlation with Redis cache. And what we realized was, what we've been aware of for a while, is that Redis cache has eviction bursts. And it's supposed to evict because it's configured with a max memory limit. So whenever it hits the limit, it needs to evict stuff. And what we were hoping was that Redis 6.2 would push the bursts down and just evict at a more constant rate, because it contains code changes that should make it do that differently. And you can see the changes if you look at the eviction rate. So, okay, let me also refresh this because it's not from an hour. So what is interesting here in this is the eviction rate. So this is a counter in Redis that we can track via Prometheus. And what's interesting is these bumps down here. I think these bumps are the effect of the new eviction code in 6.2. Because if I go back in time 24 hours, then the bumps don't exist. You only see the peaks. So something did change, but it's not working the way we want it to, because we don't want these graphs to go this high. And it's really quite mysterious, because the only thing that increases this counter is the eviction code. Like if you search for there's a variable in Redis that is the eviction counter, and it really only gets incremented in one place. So it has to be that thing, and it still has these bursts. So that's
yeah, but any memory pressure can induce an eviction burst. Even the client connection buffers count against that budget.
But that's not the point. The point is that the new code has a latency. It's designed to not have bursts. It will only do it for 500 microseconds, and then it will yield to the next request. So this means that it does 500 microseconds of evictions, and then something else, and then 500 microseconds of evictions, and then something else. So why isn't it? Why does it behave like this sometimes, and then sometimes it still gets to do this much work? there really is a fundamental change in how the evictions work in Redis in 6.2. So before 6.2, Redis would notice that it was over its targets and it would stop everything and start evicting stuff until it hit its targets. So then it's easy to understand that you will see bursts if you go over the limit by a lot, because there's just, it's only doing that. Like right, the main thread is it's a single thread. It's in a loop and it's only evicting until it meets its goal. But now every time it evicts a key, it looks at the current time. And if it's been evicting in the eviction loop for 500 microseconds, it stops. So it's surprising that we can have these bursts, even though it pauses every 500 microseconds.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to say. I haven't looked at the 6.2 code, so, but it sounds to me like the next step would be to do some profiling during one of these bursts, during surrounding one of these bursts, particularly like for the, oh gosh, the Zoom widget's in the way. Waiting for it to disappear. Oh gosh, Zoom. Anyway, the 10-minute window that includes, there we go, like from say 1527 to 1536 would be sufficient, I think, just looking at the middle of the graph that you've got on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would teach us a lot. And it looks like because of the time scale that we're looking at, we could afford to do, like 500, samples per, like the sampling rate could be reasonably low, not super aggressive.
Yeah, it seems to be a period of about, it's not entirely periodic, right? But
right,
it's 5 to 10 minutes in between.
Yeah, so I wouldn't feel bad about running a profile for multiple minutes at at kind of a modest rate, and it can tell us it can tell us more precisely the duration of the burst. So if we want to, we can once we get our first kind of medium, kind of lowish sampling rate to get a panorama of where the activity is centered. This is obviously going to be CPU centric, so we'll see it in the profile.
Yeah.
We can predict roughly when the bursts are going to happen, and then take a higher sampling rate closer to when this burst is going to happen, if we deem that we need to, which we may not.
Yeah.
We may not.
Yeah, no, that would be interesting, because it would corroborate what the code looks to be doing.
Yeah.
Especially if you use this visualization that I don't know how to make, where you get the dots over time.
Yes, the flamescape.
Grid. Yeah. Because that should show the cluster of the stack frames.
Exactly. Yeah.
On the eviction loop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We'll see exactly when it happens and zoom in on that particular period.
I almost wonder if there is either it has nothing else to do, so there are no requests coming in for a strange reason, because then
I've wondered that too, but it doesn't sound plausible, does it?
No, but how else can it chew through so many keys in 500 microsecond bursts?
Yeah.
And this is something I don't understand so well. So if the 500 microsecond burst is up, the new eviction codes will schedule a proc on the event loop in Redis, and I don't know exactly what that means, but it says 0 seconds in the future, do this, do another chunk, another 500 microseconds. So I think the idea is that next chunk of 500 microseconds joins the back of a queue, and other work happens first. But maybe there is something pathological where it's at the head of the queue, and even though stuff is supposed to happen in between these little 500 microsecond blocks, they're all back to back.
Maybe, yeah. Well, the profile should show us, should answer some of these questions. I think you're asking exactly the right questions, by the way. Those are clear, great next steps.
Thanks. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we should we should figure out how to do this profile in a safe way, and if we need high resolution or not.
So this is happening right now, right?
This happens continuously. This is
yes.
End time is now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So so probably after this call, I'll.
It happens while we're talking. What happens?
Yeah. So I want to catch this before the daily workload cycle starts to wane. But apart from that, I think we can gather more information today. Oh, would you share a link to the Thanos graph you were just?
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Great, thanks.
Well, you have to click through the issue, but then you get there. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, I think I've shared everything I wanted to share here. So
How did
I-
you notice
yeah.
this? What were you looking at when you noticed it?
I just went through well, we had an incident a while back, which was sort of borderline incident, but our SLIs decided it was an incident on the Git service. And then we realized it was because of these evictions causing latency on the, so that was the log graph. So we knew about that. And that's how we came up with, we rediscovered that we wanted to upgrade to 6.2. And I saw Alejandro posting that he was working on that. So the other day I was just curious, like, hey, refresh, is it on 6.2? I actually had a Thanos graph with the versions open. So I just was F5ing that until it reached 6.2 in production. And then I looked and then it didn't get better. So then I just looked at the log graph again. Another thing that, I mean, we have one tunable thing, which is that these 500 microsecond windows, we can make them shorter or longer, but I don't have a good reason to think that would help. But if I don't know, if that may be an outcome that we decide we need a longer or shorter window for these things. But I think we first need to gather data, like Matt was saying. End of agenda item.
I had a question around the agenda item. We happened to notice it because you were looking at the graphs for other reasons, and it seemed that the app spikes didn't get bad enough that it actually alerted. But I'm hesitant to put in like excessive process around things like upgrades. But would it be helpful to? Was there something that we weren't monitoring that we should have monitored? Should we have kept this open for longer to see it? Like,
you're talking about a different problem now because something went wrong during the upgrade, where we started doing background saves on Redis cache.
That's true. Sorry, I was just thinking about the upgrade in general. Yeah.
Right. I noticed that too because I was looking, but that wasn't what I was looking for in the first place. I just
no, I was just talking in reference to the upgrade in general.
Well, we do have a latency app tax, and it wasn't complaining, so maybe it wasn't a problem.
Which one are you talking about? The
first panel on the left on Redis cache. If you go to the dashboard, maybe I should just pull up the dashboard so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I've got it open.
Do you want to share it?
I can try. Can we see the dashboard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Zoom. I have no idea how, but sometimes it randomly works. So
we're looking at Slack.
You're looking at Slack?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the dashboard.
It had shown the dashboard and then it stopped showing the dashboard and just shows Slack now.
Yeah.
Want me to
somebody else?
Yeah, I'll
can
share it.
Maybe I still need to figure out this X-Wayland stuff.
Only now it's not loading. Maybe I need to make it shorter. This is the service dashboard for Redis cache, except it's not loading.
I think there was an incident about related to the dashboard, so it might not load.
Okay, well,
How
but
long ago was the incident related to the dashboards?
let me check. So it was about the Thanos store SLI, and I think that if you go to the production channel, the alerts are still active, I think. So that might be the problem.
It sounds very likely because all this data needs to come from Thanos and it's not loading.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we know what this looks like, these are the meant to be the 4 golden signals, and this is the app tags we have. Oh, no data. This is measuring a latency from the Rails client side, and there should be a line in there where an SLO. So to get back to Rachel's question, apparently we were not crossing that line.
Yeah, I just added into the Zoom chat, there's a link to, since you're screen sharing, can you click it? It's a snapshot of that very dashboard panel. that won't load right now.
So direct you exactly to that.
Yeah, so this is the first panel literally on the page, but zoomed in. And this, what are the lines again?
Oh man, I left the legend off. I'm sorry.
That's fine. So I suppose, so one of these must be the
Soft
1 hour and the other the 6
Yeah,
hour.
the thin line is the 6 hour and the
Yeah.
thick line is the 1 hour.
So if we would have spent enough time below the thin line, it would have alerted, or would it?
Yes, if that took long enough.
Yeah,
Well, this was constant because this area here is because of the background
Yeah,
saving.
but that's the 6 hour line. So you need
Right.
6 hours and half an hour to
Yeah.
alert.
Right, 6 hours of time spent
Yeah.
below the line. Yeah, okay, so that would have taken a long
No,
time.
like over time, you need to have spent 5% of the what you're allowed to spend.
Yeah.
And then it needs to have been especially bad for half an hour for the alert to trigger.
So this was a borderline case that may not have triggered.
Yeah, but
if we hadn't dealt with it, it would have triggered after a few more hours. That was a beautiful summary, Bob. I love the way you framed that. That was so concise.
I just wrote it in a blog post. That's why.
So Rachel, maybe if I hadn't said anything, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If I hadn't noticed
This
this.
is possible. Yeah, because it would have alerted at some point, and then we would have dealt with it because it had alerted. It just we got early warning because you were interested in something else.
But you do bring up something interesting, Rachel. How do we tighten thresholds? Like our goal is to always keep tightening them if we can. And some like now I'm looking at metrics for specific SLIs that I'm going to tighten after I'm done. But then for these ones like that we haven't looked at in a while, how do we decide to tighten them or not?
Well, this one's difficult because we still have those eviction spikes. It's too bad that the page doesn't load because I was actually looking at it and this latency graph does look better after the upgrade, from what I remember. I don't know if other people saw that. So after we turned off the background saves, it got better.
It's a bit concerning that those graphs won't load. If we were having a proper incident right now and we needed to see them, we'd have a problem.
Yep.
As we have had
During
very
every
frequently during every incident over the last 1+ years. Yes.
Oh, 1+ years. Okay. I don't know if I feel better or worse about that.
Well, the problem was we had one person who was really good at keeping Thanos running smoothly, and he left. And I don't know what or who replaced that person.
Yeah, you do. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be snarky.
No, but I mean,
seriously,
Ben was a sort of wizard with all this Thanos stuff, and
yeah, that was his cup of tea for sure.
Yeah, who has taken over from him?
Nobody has. A few people have stepped up to deal with critical issues as they emerge. I know Mikhail has done intermittently some work on this, for example, but I don't think it has a new, at least to the best of my knowledge, we don't have a new owner for the service, and I think there's general recognition that that's a gap we need to fill.
There's a squad working on that. Mihao is one of them. I just was in a call where they are like, yeah, the call got cancelled because there was an incident regarding Thanos, but
oh, nice.
they're discussing on how to like get the handle on things.
But there is
Fantastic.
a squad. That's good.
Yes, there was a squad that started like a few months ago, and then they got pulled off of that job because of another task, and now they're back to it since like today.
Fantastic. That's great. Yeah, I'd only heard that there had been a squad and it got reassigned.
Is there anything else anyone would like to demo on the call today?
I don't know that it's worth demoing, but I found something yesterday that I'm kind of freaked out about. I can share it with you if you want to be scared too.
Let's do it.
Okay, so through an uninteresting sequence of coincidences, I ended up on a call yesterday with some of the DVREs to chat about a couple of points of concern related to us building our own Postgres packages. Currently in production, we're running 10 Petroni nodes. 2 of those Petroni nodes are running a custom Postgres build that we built, and there are some problems with that build, and I'm going to gloss that over for now. And the other 8 Petroni nodes are running the community build. These hosts are still running Ubuntu 16.04, which is way past end of life, and upstream package providers are no longer building, including the Postgres community, is no longer building packages for point releases. So we're stuck running Postgres 12.7 in production currently, and we want to get to 12.9 because it's got some improvements that we'd like to have, but there are no packages for 12.9 for Ubuntu 16.04. That's the backdrop.
Except ours, because we still make packages for 16.04 via Omnibus.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So we don't run our Omnibus builds in on these nodes, and I'm not privy to all of the decisions that went into this, but apparently we decided that we were gonna try to use the Debian package recipes for building the PostgreSQL 12 package and its friends. Here's the catch. There are a few problems with doing that, but the one that concerns me most now is most of the code that we run in Postgres is part of the Postgres core. That is to say, we run about 10 or so extensions to Postgres, and all but one of them in production, and all but one of them are part of the Postgres core source code. And so there's absolutely no risk of version incompatibility. But there's one called PG Repack whose job is literally to rewrite data files in the database in a more lock-friendly manner than the native behavior. That was built against the Postgres 12.4 headers. We are not running Postgres 12.4. That means that binary and its shared object file is using the wrong headers. That freaks me out because these extensions run in the context of Postgres backend processes. They have access to shared memory. They have access to data files.
Doesn't Postgres also change their binary format on minor releases?
I think only major releases
only
the binary format. Yeah.
Okay. Because that would have been even crazier if the thing was rewriting files in the wrong form. I guess it would have blown up by now. That's
a great question, and yes, so that's a major version boundary concern. Even minor versions, though, can potentially change. Like, I mean, for example, if there's a struct who added or lost a field, and now we'll be looking at the wrong offset into that struct because we used the wrong header file when building PG Repack. This is kind of freaking me out because there are so many bad things that can happen when you have effectively incorrect dereference. When extensions run in the same context as, at least the extensions that I've worked with, and just to be clear, I've only worked with in-core extensions, not these third-party extensions which use a different framework, but they still end up compiling using headers from whatever Postgres server was used as part of the build process. So I just checked this out last night to be sure. Yeah, so that's the thing that's kind of bothering me right now. To the best of my knowledge, I think we do use PG. I think we do use PG Repack irregularly. I don't think we've run this very often. But I'm not trying to stay in the loop on on our database maintenance. So anyway, that was something I came across yesterday, and I was hopeful that this was that someone had already decided to address this, but it turned out that when I chatted in that meeting, it wasn't on their radar. So so I've raised that as concern. I wasn't sure yesterday morning whether I was overreacting to this or not. but I'm pretty confident now that I'm not. I think this is a serious problem. I think this is a serious risk, and I think we're super duper lucky that there is only one extension in production that falls into this category of crossing version boundaries.
So when you say you raised,
yeah.
So when you say you raised the concern, was this an issue created and then sent on to the team? Like, how have you raised the concern?
Well, I raised it first in a Slack conversation, and then in that meeting I mentioned yesterday morning. The meeting went long, and I think the folks on the call were pretty receptive to the concern. And when folks had to start dropping off the meeting, we agreed that we would switch to async. And they suggested using the existing change issue for the async conversation to continue, which I followed that request. In hindsight, I feel like maybe a separate issue would have been better. And I've got like about 2 or 3 pages worth of notes that I've added in a long comment thread on that issue. So I guess if
I think it's one of the hard things about not being responsible for the database ourselves is that all we can really do is make sure that the concern is raised and heard, and then leave it on their prioritization list to take care of, which is frustrating at times because we can't just do what we need to do to resolve it, but at the same time we need to leave it with them.
I agree.
But maybe we should turn it into an issue, because if it's a comment on a change request, that's at risk. It's easy to lose. Yeah,
I agree. Maybe I'll do that and link it to the change issue, just so there's a cleaner place to talk about that particular point of concern.
Yeah, if it's only one aspect of the change issue, if it's only one portion of it, then at least the rest of it can be closed off and this conversation can continue.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I'll do that, and then I'll step away from it. There's obviously a bunch of other things I need to focus on as well, but this seemed like a big deal. I shouldn't sugarcoat it. This is a huge problem. This can literally crash our servers or corrupt our data files, and the nature of the problem could be it could range from no impact at all if we're lucky, to subtle impact that doesn't manifest immediately or obviously, to really overt impacts such as actually crashing all of the Postgres processes because it tainted shared memory, or damaging a control file or a data file. It really is kind of up in the air about how big the impact can be, and it would of course be it can change on each time we do a minor version bump. The risk is reintroduced because it's not about the one-line change that we've made to the Postgres source code. It's about all of the differences that have accumulated in the Postgres source code between 12.4 when the extension was built versus whatever version we're running now. So that's
When the issue's raised, would you please send it over to me, because then I can also make sure that the right people get to see it or have seen it.
Yeah, definitely. I will do so.
Thank you.
I'll probably just copy and paste a lot of what I've already put in the comment thread.
That's probably fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's all I had on that topic. I feel like every time I'm in one of these demos, I offer to show something new about builds or binary analysis. So I've got a few things I could talk about, but it's probably not germane to most folks. So I guess I'll just hush up and.
I don't know if this got discussed before, but Alejandro, maybe you can share something about the Redis 6.2 upgrade, how that went, or.
That sounds good.
Yeah, sure. I think it went relatively good, except for what you found, which is that we had to disable the background saves. But we had a script that Igor developed, and that worked out pretty well. We just had to do an adjustment for the Sentinel nodes because Redis Cache has external Sentinel hosts. So we had to modify the script to take that into account. As a result, it's not an optimal script now because there's no reason why, like the way we do it now in the script is that you reconfigure the first Redis node and then you reconfigure the first Sentinel node, but there's no reason why that has to be an order. They're not correlated, the Redis node and the Sentinel node. But
Are you now talking about the general process or the background safe problem?
No, just the general process. Yeah, just thinking of what could improve. But with regards to the background safe problem, the thing that was a bit of a surprise is that it seems that this was a change in Redis 6.2 because we had the same settings as we had with 6.0. It's just that it seems that now if you don't have safe settings, it puts the default settings on your configuration. So to keep the old behavior, you had to have a safe setting with an empty string. So instead of having no setting, you have a setting with an empty string. And maybe we should have been more aware of that behavior change so that we didn't deal with it.
And that wasn't the only one, right? There was also something about IP addresses and host names.
Yeah. Let me recall about that one. I think the problem with that one is that we were using host names to reference a Redis node from the Sentinel node. And on Redis 6.2, they changed that so that there's no automatic host to IP translation. So we had to change to an IP. So yeah, those were two changes where we had to ping the distribution team so that they are aware that there might be external customers that are also affected by this. It's probably unlikely. It's probably 99% of external customers probably have a single Redis node that they use for everything, and it has no external sentiment, but it's something that they should be aware of.
I just wonder on the Redis was sort of created by one person, and I forget his name. But his nickname is Anti-Res or something. And he was the maintainer of Redis for a very long time, but he stepped down, I think, a year ago or so. And I wonder if what this has related with the maintainer stepping down, that they have a different attitude to changes or not. But I'm speculating now. It's irrelevant. It's speculation. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the changelog, for example, the change in behavior in background safe is just it's not mentioned as a breaking change. It's just there you have to go to the book fixes and it says, oh, change a behavior where no setting will give you the defaults. So if you are just reading the breaking changes section, you wouldn't have caught either of these changes, which is weird.
It's too bad that Igor dropped off because I think he reads the change logs quite carefully, so he might have perspective on whether this is surprising or not. But
yeah, we talked about it yesterday, Igor and Alejandro and I. We all agreed it was surprising. We were all surprised by it. It's essentially a semantic change where the presence or absence of a save directive in the Redis conf has different semantic behavior between those versions.
It's a huge change. I mean, Redis is part of this. I guess it's sort of part of the NoSQL hype, where databases could look fast because they don't store your data. I mean, the other famous example is MongoDB not flushing writes to disk, but if you boot Redis, it doesn't save your data to disk. And I remember the Redis creator having a blog post where he says, by the way, my entire blog is on Redis and background saving is off. So I almost lost my blog because I restarted the Redis process. He just had a Redis process running somewhere. So it's just, I don't know, it's very NoSQL-y thing that it doesn't save by default. So that's quite a big change to call that a bug fix. I mean, probably for the better for most people. But yeah.
Anything else on the list for today? Oh, well, thanks for the good conversation. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days and looking forward to seeing you all again soon.